Hi, I'm Dr. Maya Ellison. Welcome to the episode. Today we're talking about something almost everyone does, but very few people talk about without awkwardness: masturbation. Yep, we're going there.
By the way, quick trigger note. We'll be talking about sexual behavior and history, and some cultural and religious reactions. If that's uncomfortable, that's okay. Stay with me. So let's start with a paradox. Masturbation is extremely common, but it's also one of the most taboo topics in our culture. You know that feeling when you find out a friend is into something and you're like, oh, same. That's the upside. The downside is that most of us learned about it from jokes, porn, or really scary 18th century pamphlets. I'm not kidding. Quick stats to open. Depending on the study, about 86 to 96% of men report masturbating at least once in their lives, and roughly 76 to 88% of women do. A broad sample across Europe and the US suggests roughly 78% of adults have masturbated, and some US data shows as high as 92% of men and 76% of women. Those numbers tell you two things. This is normal, and it's widespread. Period.
Wow.
I say that not to normalize for the sake of normalization alone, but to anchor the rest of the conversation. So much of the shame and the myths don't line up with how common the behavior actually is. Okay, definitions. Let's get basic. Masturbation is self-stimulation of one's genitals for sexual pleasure or orgasm, using hands, sex toys, or other objects. It can be solo or mutual, with or without porn. There are terms people use: edging, nofap, mutual masturbation, and those are helpful to know because research doesn't always ask the same questions about technique or whether porn was used.
So, what does the research actually show about prevalence and patterns? Let's dig in. Across the lifespan, masturbation is common. One big U.S. probability sample of people aged 14 to 94 showed that masturbation is often more common than partnered sex during adolescence and into older age. That's interesting, right? Teens may have more solo experiences than partnered ones, and older adults, when partners are absent or health limits partnered sex, often continue to masturbate. It's a lifelong outlet for many folks.
Right. Frequency varies by gender and age. Men tend to report masturbating more frequently than women at a population level, and rates often decline somewhat with age, but not in a dramatic way for everyone. In recent surveys, anywhere from about 50 to 77% of men reported masturbation in the past month, depending on age. For women, past month rates are commonly somewhere in the 20 to 40% range, though samples vary. Some sex-positive female audiences report much higher weekly rates, which tells us sampling matters. There's a detailed breakdown from a recent U.S. dataset. Among men, about 9.9% reported almost daily masturbation over the past year, 17.1% 2 to 3 times a week, 8.9% once a week, 16.1% a few times per month, and 24.2% reported not masturbating at all that year. So frequency spans a big range. Numbers alone don't tell us whether that's healthy or not. Motivation and impact matter a lot.
Adolescence. This is important because a lot of early shame is planted in teenage years. In U.S. adolescent surveys, by age 14, roughly 63% of boys had masturbated, and about 43% of girls had. By age 17, those numbers rise. About 80% of boys and 58% of girls had ever masturbated. Also, for many teens, masturbation is more common than partnered sex. That's not detachment from relationships, it's exploration and learning. That's normal sexual development.
Okay, motive time. Why do people masturbate? The answers are actually refreshingly ordinary. It feels good, it relieves sexual tension, it reduces stress. About 36% of both men and women in surveys said they masturbate specifically to relieve stress. Some use it to help sleep, for relaxation, or simply curiosity and self-exploration. During the COVID-19 pandemic, lots of people reported declines in partnered sex and increases in masturbation and sex toy use. So masturbation also functions as a coping tool and substitute when contact is limited.
You see, masturbation is not only pleasure, it's regulation. It's mood management, sleep help, and sometimes a way to practice boundaries and discover what you like.
Let's talk about physical health effects. This is where myths often flourish. The mainstream medical consensus, masturbation itself is not physically harmful for most people when it's consensual, not compulsive, and physically safe. It's not going to make you blind, give you hairy palms, or rob you of life force. Those myths come from earlier centuries.
Right, history. I love the history part because it explains where the panic started. In the early 18th century, there was a pamphlet called Onania. Yeah, Onania, anonymously published. It framed masturbation as a heinous sin and claimed all sorts of terrifying consequences: epilepsy, fainting, feeble legs, moral decay. It sold cures, too. That pamphlet and its descendants seeded the 18th, 19th century medical and moral panic that labeled masturbation as pathological. Famous historians like Thomas LaCure called this a cultural transformation. Sexuality shifted toward being about private pleasure, which threatened older social norms. Those catastrophic claims, they don't stand up to modern medical evidence.
I mean, can you imagine? Feeble legs from touching yourself? Let's be precise about benefits that actually have some evidence. For people with vulvas, sexual arousal and orgasm increase blood flow to genital tissues and can support lubrication and tissue health, which can be helpful especially during menopause. Masturbation can be part of therapy for sexual pain or difficulty reaching orgasm. Learning what works for your body is clinical work. There are some niche but fascinating findings too. A meta-analysis found that sexual activity or masturbation several times a week increased the chance of passing distal urethral kidney stones for men. Basically, orgasm can help with stone expulsion in some cases. Wild, right?
Yeah.
There's also been interest in whether ejaculation frequency affects prostate cancer risk. Older observational studies suggested more frequent ejaculation might reduce risk, but a 2025 updated meta-analysis across 29 studies with over 315,000 participants found no strong, statistically significant overall effect. The odds ratio for higher masturbation frequency was close to 1.12, with confidence intervals overlapping 1.0, so no clear protective or harmful effect in the big picture. Bottom line, if you're masturbating to reduce cancer risk, the evidence doesn't support a strong claim either way.
Potential downsides, mostly practical. Aggressive techniques without lubrication can cause irritation or micro tears. Using unsafe objects or unsafe insertion can cause serious injury. Heavy porn use tied to certain masturbation practices can sometimes co-occur with erectile difficulties in partnered sex, but causality is complicated, and we'll get to porn shortly. And if masturbation becomes compulsive, meaning it interferes with work, relationships, sleep, or the person can't cut back despite wanting to, then it's a problem more about compulsion and coping than about masturbation per se.
Pause. All right, mental health. Context matters here massively. When people masturbate in an environment free from shame, they commonly report pleasure, stress relief, better sleep, and greater body familiarity. Couple that with good sexual education, and masturbation can increase sexual self-efficacy, confidence in sexual situations, and clearer personal boundaries.
But when masturbation is embedded in shame, guilt, or religious conflict, folks report higher distress. There's a pattern researchers call sexual scrupulosity, obsessive guilt about sexual thoughts and acts, often seen in some religious contexts. And that guilt is strongly associated with anxiety and depression. So again, it's not the behavior itself causing harm in the majority of cases. It's the network of meaning around it.
Yeah, let's bust some popular myths quickly. Myth: masturbation causes blindness, infertility, or insanity. False. Those claims go back to Onania and 19th century moral panics. Myth: masturbation permanently drains your life energy or testosterone. Not true. Orgasm causes temporary hormonal shifts and a refractory period, but no lasting damage to testosterone in healthy adults. Myth: only people without partners masturbate. No, surveys show many people in relationships masturbate. One compilation notes about 81% of Americans have masturbated while in a relationship. Another myth: if you masturbate, you'll never enjoy partnered sex. Not supported. For many, masturbation enhances partnered sex by increasing self-knowledge. So if so much of the worry is myth-driven, what about culture and religion? The landscape is complicated. Traditional Catholic teaching historically condemns masturbation as gravely disordered because it separates sex from procreation and the unitive purpose. Many Protestant traditions vary widely, from condemnation to nuanced acceptance, depending on context. In Islam, classical jurisprudence is divided. Some scholars forbid it, others allow it as a lesser evil in certain circumstances. Judaism has varied traditions too. Some Orthodox authorities oppose male masturbation strongly, while liberal Jewish communities are more permissive. Hindu and Buddhist traditions are even more diverse, often emphasizing non-harm and mindful awareness instead of blanket prohibition. The key is, religions are not monoliths here. Positions range widely.
I want to bring up the digital era because it has changed how people masturbate. The internet made pornography instantly accessible and increasingly specialized. For many people, especially younger folks, masturbation and porn are tightly linked. That's not inherently bad, but it introduces new variables.
Concerns that get raised a lot. Clinicians and groups claim porn-induced erectile dysfunction, PIED, is rising. Research finds correlations between very heavy porn use, novelty seeking, and difficulties maintaining arousal with partners. But causation is hotly debated. Anxiety, relationship factors, and other mental health issues likely play big roles. Some heavy users report escalation, needing more novel or extreme content for the same arousal, similar to a tolerance effect, but data are mixed. So the safe framing is, porn is a separate variable with its own benefits and harms. It's not identical to masturbation.
There are benefits of porn-linked masturbation for some people. Safe outlet, exploration of fantasies not acted upon in real life, a kind of informal sex education if formal education is absent. And harms, unrealistic expectations, reinforcement of problematic scripts, or compulsive use that interferes with life. Again, context and content matter.
Okay, let's talk about the no-fap movement and abstinence communities, because people ask about this a lot. No-fap started online as a community reframing abstinence from porn and masturbation as a route to increased energy, confidence, and improved social life. Members report life changes. From the scientific perspective, direct, rigorous studies of these structured programs are limited. Short-term abstinence can cause small hormonal fluctuations, but these aren't long-lasting. Many reported benefits likely come from regained agency, social support, and breaking compulsive patterns, rather than some mystical boost of masculine energy. And for some people, strict abstinence increases anxiety and obsession. It's not one size fits all.
Right.
So when does masturbation become problematic? It's not about frequency alone. Daily masturbation can be perfectly fine for some people. Problematic patterns look like repeated use that interferes with daily functioning, inability to cut down despite harm, using it as the only coping strategy, or when extreme secrecy and shame erode relationships and self-worth. If you're wondering whether your pattern is harmful, look at function and consequences rather than a number on a calendar.
Let me tell a composite story that's grounded in common clinical accounts. Imagine a 28-year-old named Jordan who started using porn-heavy masturbation in college, initially as a normal outlet. Over several years, stress at work and anxiety increased, and masturbation became a primary way to numb. Jordan noticed difficulty being present with a partner and lost sleep. He tried to quit and felt ashamed he couldn't. What helped was not magic. Jordan found therapy, learned alternative coping skills for anxiety, set some practical limits on porn use, and practiced sexual communication with their partner. The result wasn't perfect abstinence. It was more balanced sexual functioning and less shame. That's the pattern we see in clinic. Treatment focuses on underlying issues, not the behavior in isolation.
Yeah.
Relationships, another big terrain. People worry masturbation will sabotage partnered sex or be a betrayal. For many couples, masturbation is complementary, a way to bridge libido gaps, a way to learn preferences that can be shared, or a necessity during long distance or illness. Problems tend to arise when there's secrecy or differing values about porn and porn content. Open communication and agreements, whatever works for that couple, are the practical touchstones here. One concrete tip:
Sharing how you like to be touched through solo exploration can be a gentle, practical bridge to better partnered sex.
You see what I'm saying?
You see what I'm saying? Gender and orientation differences, men report higher frequency overall, earlier onset, and higher reported prevalence. Women report lower frequency on average, but this is partially shaped by cultural taboo and underreporting. LGBTQ+ folks sometimes report higher masturbation frequency, especially when closeted or when partners are scarce. Masturbation can be a safe way to explore attraction and fantasies. What about public health and sex education? This matters. Many abstinence-only curricula avoid or condemn masturbation. Comprehensive sexual education, however, often frames masturbation as a normal part of development and as a risk-free way to experience pleasure. No pregnancy, no STIs. Adolescents who receive comprehensive, positive sex education that includes masturbation tend to have better sexual health outcomes, more contraceptive use, later first sex, and less shame. So education style matters immensely.
Let's do a myth-busting, rapid-fire short Q&A. I'll answer them fast. First, does masturbation stunt growth? No. Will I get addicted just because I masturbate a lot? Not necessarily. Addiction or compulsion is about loss of control and harm, not frequency alone. Is it okay if I masturbate while in a relationship? Often yes. Communication is the key. Is porn the same as masturbation? No. Porn is an accessory or a separate variable, not inherently the same. Short. Some practical guidance, because we don't just need facts, we need tools. If you're feeling shame rooted in religion or upbringing, it can help to separate behavior from moral self-worth. Ask yourself, what about this is causing distress? The act, the beliefs, or the secrecy? Is masturbation interfering with daily life? Consider therapy for compulsive behaviors. Learn alternative coping skills for anxiety or boredom, and set small, achievable behavior changes instead of dramatic all-or-nothing rules. If porn use is a concern, experiment with reducing it, using ethical porn, or practicing porn-free masturbation to reconnect with your body without visuals. And if you're in a relationship, have an open conversation about boundaries and needs. Curiosity beats accusations most days.
By the way, for people wrestling with religious dissonance, there are faith leaders and communities that approach this with nuance, emphasizing conscience, intent, harm reduction, and healthy sexuality instead of absolute prohibitions. If your faith is important to you, find a counselor or spiritual guide who understands both religion and sexual health. You don't have to choose between spiritual integrity and sexual health. Let's circle back to the weird specific studies because they're good conversation fodder. One meta-analysis on masturbation and kidney stones found that sexual activity or masturbation 3 to 4 times a week helped stone expulsion in men with distal ureteral stones. That's a very specific clinical application. Orgasm can have physiological effects beyond pleasure. Then there's the prostate meta-analysis I mentioned earlier. Across huge samples, no clear protective effect of high ejaculation frequency on prostate cancer risk emerges as a straightforward conclusion. Those two facts together underscore that sexual physiology ties into health in nuanced ways.
A note on language. I use the word masturbation intentionally because it's clear, but people use different terms. Self-pleasure, solo sex, self-stimulation, and that's fine. Use the terms that fit your body and community. In therapy, I encourage folks to name things in ways that reduce shame and increase clarity.
Okay, let's close with a story scaffold. Picture a teenager named Sam, who was told in youth group that masturbation would ruin their life. Sam internalized that fear, felt intense shame for something almost every peer was doing, and hid it. Fast forward, Sam gets into college, finds more nuanced information, learns that the claims were myths rooted in historical panic, and slowly rebuilds a relationship with their body with less shame. Many people's journeys look like that, moving from fear to curiosity to agency.
I see. Final takeaways: masturbation is a common human behavior that serves many functions: pleasure, stress relief, sleep aid, self-exploration. Its effects on health are mostly neutral to positive when it's not tied to compulsion or shame. Historical myths like onania created a lot of the modern fear, and those narratives linger in cultural and religious messaging. Porn, digital access, and online abstinence movements complicate the landscape, but the core principles are simple. Look at context, motivation, and impact. If it helps you and doesn't harm you or others, it's usually fine. If it causes shame or dysfunction, look at the beliefs and coping patterns around it, not just the behavior.
So, what should you do next? Educate yourself from evidence-based sources. Talk to a trusted provider or counselor if you're distressed. And if you're in a relationship, talk about it. Practice curiosity. What do you like? How does it affect your day-to-day life? And what would you change if it bothered you?
One last thing. This is not a moral instruction. This is a harm reduction, compassionate framework. Whether you choose abstinence, regular solo sex, or some combination, the goal is well-being, mental, relational, and physical. Thanks for sitting with me through this. If this episode stirred something up, questions, relief, confusion, send them in. I read listener notes and I'll tackle them in a future Q&A. Oh, quick resources if you want to read more. The large U.S. probability samples on sexual behavior. One paper covers ages 14 to 94. The adolescent JAMA pediatric study on teen masturbation. The COVID-era systematic reviews on adult sexual behavior that show increases in masturbation. The kidney stone meta-analysis and the updated prostate cancer meta-analysis. All of those inform today's episode.
All right, I'll sign off. I'm Dr. Maya Ellison. Take care of your body, take care of your mind, and be kind to yourself. See you next time.